Hello friends, JJMerrill here. Hope you guys are doing well. I'm going to be bringing you a little bit different content than what I typically make today. A question that I very frequently receive on the content I've uploaded in the past is, what is my recording process and how do I go about it? And I think it's finally time I answered that question. So I do want to say thank you for the consistently high praise that I get on the upload quality of my videos that I make. And I think it's finally time that I reveal my process. Now, before I get into this, I'm not going to go terribly in depth on any of these tools, but I am going to give you the knowledge to make pretty much the exact same quality of content as I do with Dota 2 or any other game that you'd like to record. That being said, there are going to be three key tools that you're going to need. You're going to need video recording software. In this case, I'm using fraps. You're also going to need video compression and editing software. In this case, I'm making use of Sony Vegas for both my compressor and my editor. And also a fourth optional component of this is an audio editing piece. I highly recommend this because it's going to make your videos just sound a lot more professional. Audio is very, very important. It's not just about the video. To kind of indicate this, I record myself using a decade-old Logitech desktop mic that I'm amazed even still works. But the fact that I actually go through and I try to clean up my voice, clean up the background noise a little bit does make an enormous difference. So you don't have to have, high-end recording software, a really cool recording mic, a nice set of headphones, all that stuff. You can get started with some basic equipment, a little bit of time and patience, and if you have the inspiration for it. If you have any interest in doing this, I'd recommend it. It's really fun. Give it a shot. You'll learn a lot about your own gameplay as well, and yeah, I would definitely go for it. But anyway, aside from all that, those are going to be the four tools that I highly recommend you're going to need. Three of them, and again, I recommend the audio editing as well. Now, I do want to go ahead and talk about the other key part of this, in that you need to have a machine that's going to be able to handle recording at high resolutions. Whenever you record at high resolutions like 1920 by 1080, it requires your computer to write a massive amount of data to its hard drive, or solid state drive, whatever you might be using. So in this case, I actually use a 10K RPM 300 gigabyte Raptor drive for my purposes. Now, what I do want to talk about here is that I would probably recommend a solid state drive nowadays. I have to admit I'm a little bit behind on the technology when it comes to the the real differences between 10K and solid state drives. By the way, if you're not sure what 10K RPM means, it simply means that it's a faster hard drive than a conventional 7200 RPM drive. And it has helped me a lot. I was not able to record at the consistently high frames per second that I was before I picked up this drive, and I would not recommend one that's below 300 gigabytes. Writing 1920 by 1080 raw video data, about an hour of Dota 2 footage in this drive is completely full. Some of my longer guides, I've actually had to split up whenever it gets near the end, which can be a real hassle. I would recommend probably at least a 500 gig drive, if not more. Solid state drives are still pretty expensive at the time of making this video, but if you can afford it and you're serious about this stuff, I would go for it. But you will have to have some kind of decent drive. You can give it a shot, but you may not be able to record at 1920 by 1080 at 60 frames per second. So, I now want to go ahead and talk about fraps. This is going to be your recording software. A couple key things I want to mention right away on the General tab. I'm using the Monitor Aero desktop to actually record my desktop right now. This is really useful for a lot of things, and I would not be able to make this video without this feature, so that's always really helpful. If I go to the FPS tab, the one thing I want to talk about here is this overlay corner. You'll notice I have a red number up here in the top right corner of my screen. This indicates right now that I'm currently recording and also shows the frames per second that I'm recording at. I can turn this overlay off or change its position at any time I want to whenever I set an overlay hotkey. When you're actually recording your game, I highly recommend turning this off, or else Fraps is probably going to pick it up. It picks it up on the Windows desktop. I've seen it pick it up in some games and not in other games, but just to be safe, turn this off. It makes your videos look a lot cleaner and just, gets rid of an annoying number in the top right corner. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to leave it on just to show you how it works. If we move on to the Movies tab, you're going to notice here it says a folder to save movies in, and it's set to my D drive right now. I have that mapped to the 10K Raptor drive I was talking about earlier. You'll notice it's actually filled up a little bit more since I was last here, just maybe a minute ago. This is actually the file that it's writing right now as I'm recording this. So, yeah, there goes another gigabyte right there. So this stuff does take a lot of room. And this is where, anyway, sorry, the point of this is that this is actually where you're going to need to save the movies in. A couple other key things I want to talk about here is the video capture settings. Now, I'm not going to bring up the old 60 FPS versus 30 FPS debate, but the key thing about this section is that you can set it to record at any frames per second that you want. The reason that this is relevant is because if you try to record at too high of an FPS and your machine can't handle it, you're going to notice some lag kicking in, and that's going to be really disruptive throughout your video. You can record at 30 FPS, however, I personally prefer not to, because 60 FPS appears so much smoother and just makes it a lot easier to follow what's going on. I don't like seeing it jerk around or lag. Nobody likes lag. It's a bad time. Now, that being said, YouTube, I'm pretty sure, at least this was the case of about a year or so ago, they do automatically render the video at 30 frames per second, even if you record it at 60. But again, I like to record at 60 because it looks so much better and so much smoother. The full size and half size section, if you set it to half size, it's simply going to record at half the resolution that you're currently recording at. I don't really use this too often, but it could have some use. The last part here I want to talk about are the sound capture settings. You'll notice I have record Windows 7 sound checked. This is enabled by default. This is what's actually going to pick up the sound from your game, so make sure you have this on if you want to have any audio. Now you notice I do not have record external input checked. The reason that I do this is because I don't want fraps to pick up the voice from my microphone and combine that with the audio from DOTA 2. That's why I recommend using an audio editing program like Audacity that I referred to earlier. You'll notice you can actually see Audacity right now recording my voice as it goes along. The reason this program is important is because after I'm done recording, I can stop this, and if I go into effects, I can actually bring up some noise removal tools. This is really, really helpful. If I did not use the noise removal in this, you guys would hear a lot of static and a lot of buzzing, and that really, really brings down the quality of the video. I highly recommend Audacity. This is a free program for download. Really, really powerful editing software. A lot of musicians use it. It's really, really useful. Definitely pick it up. But again, the point I want to emphasize is that if I combine my voice with the DOTA 2 audio in the same file, I'm not going to be able to go in and cleanly remove the static, the hiss, the pops, the background noise that my microphone is picking up right now, because it's going to affect the audio from the game as well. So that's not a good time. The screenshots tab is pretty straightforward. I'm not really going to talk about that, but that, for the most part, covers fraps. Fraps is $20. Highly recommend you go pick it up. That is a bargain for how powerful this software is, and it's really, really useful. So, aside from that, I've already briefly covered Audacity. There's not much you really need to know about this, except whenever you're done recording, tell it to stop recording, and then go into here, and you're probably going to export this as an MP3 file. That's typically what I use. That's just a good, safe format to use. But this software you can export in a lot of different formats, a .wave, .ogg, whatever you want to use here. But again, make sure that you remove the noise from your voice. If you go into effects, you can go into noise sampling and remove that. There's a lot of good guides out there for how to do that, so I'd recommend you check out one of those if you're not sure how to use software like this. That's a little bit beyond the scope of this guide, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that. Now, Sony Vegas, this is really the beast of the pack. This is the software where you're going to come in, bring in your raw recorded file, bring in your audio file as well if you use an external audio recorder. This is where you're going to edit everything, compress it, and then turn it out as a finished file to upload to YouTube. Now, that being said, for the duration of this part of the tutorial, I've reached about the end of it. I can't just bring up DOTA right now and start recording because it's recording my desktop right now. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this recording, and then I'm going to go ahead and start the DOTA 2 client, and we're going to record a little bit of gameplay and show you how it works. Okay, and here we are in the DOTA 2 client. So now I'm going to show you how to take games that you've played, make replays out of them, go into them, and actually start recording where the magic happens. So if you're not familiar with the DOTA 2 replay system, it's actually pretty straightforward. You'll just go into the games that you've played, find the game that you like. Oh yeah, by the way, I lose a lot. So just because I typically upload wins does not mean that I win every single game. That is far from the truth, and I think just about anybody can say that too. But anyway, if you go into your games played, and let's bring up a game that you want to play, or that you want to record rather. Actually, I've already downloaded that one, so let's look at, say, I don't know, some game over here. So I want to go ahead and download this replay. I want to upload this video, so I'll click on Download Replay. This typically doesn't take too long. I'll download it for you. You can go to the Watch tab at the top, and go to downloaded, you're going to see all the games that you've downloaded. You can see I have quite a few downloaded myself. Whenever you find a game that you like, I highly recommend going to here and download it right away. The reason being is because replays are expiring pretty quickly nowadays. This replay is just over a week old, and it's already expired. So don't let those good games get away from you. Trust me, I've learned that the hard way. It does not feel good. I've let go of some really good content that way, unfortunately. But I've got quite a few replays here that I was interested in making tutorial videos over. So let's go ahead and fire one up and get started. Now, one thing I do want to mention before I jump into this is that I typically do not begin recording using fraps until I'm actually in-game. I'm making an exception for this just so I can show you guys how to bring up the menus and how to navigate, how to actually get started with it. But typically I'll go in and, which one do I want to use? Whatever, it really doesn't matter, I suppose. Whatever, yeah, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to watch replay. This is why I don't start recording until I'm in game, because you don't want to see a loading screen. It's kind of pointless. You would end up cutting that out anyway whenever you're actually going to go back and edit, which is going to be our next step. I'm going to go and skip ahead in time a little bit. The Dota 2 replay tool is actually really straightforward to learn how to use. You've got your timeline here. You've got how fast it's going, go back 10 seconds, stuff like that. Maybe you just want to go and look at a player perspective. Maybe I want to bring up the scoreboard, see how everybody's doing, yada yada yada. You get the idea. So all that being said, this is more or less the very, very basics of how to record within the client. Make sure you frequently use the tools like the free camera, player perspective, hero chase. By the way, learn the hotkeys for them too. I'm a scrub and I still don't use the hotkeys because I'm horrible. But hey, you can probably be better at this than I am. But that's really about it. Now, you are probably wondering, okay, how do I get all of this that I recorded? How do I get it onto YouTube? That's going to be the third and final part of this tutorial, so I'm going to go ahead and stop it for now, and we're going to pick up at that point. Okay, welcome back. Well, it was only a second for you, but this is going to be the final part of how to actually get your raw recorded footage, edit it, and upload it to YouTube. Now, I've already moved ahead a couple of steps, but I'm going to explain in detail what I've done here so you don't feel like you've been left behind. I went ahead and I've started Sony Vegas, which is again going to be our compression and editing tool, and I've incorporated the first part of the video already. Now in Sony Vegas, you're going to see this has a lot of stuff going on. I'm not going to talk about even a quarter of these sections. There's a lot of really good tutorials in Sony Vegas that are out there, but I'm going to show you just enough to know what you need to actually take your footage and edit it and upload it. But there's a lot to know about this program. It's really, really good. It's one of the better editing software I've used probably ever. It's awesome, and I also love the fact that it will do a lot of things for you. Like you can actually compress within the software, and typically you'd have to have another application outside of it to do that, blah, 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 blah. But anyway, I want to show you how to do it. So first things first, whenever you record a video within Fraps, you'll recall earlier that you saw the video appearing here in my drive where I have the files set to be stored. You're going to notice now I have several files going on here. I want to talk about each one. This file here represents my first recording section. This is where I was recording my desktop and explaining the 3 different programs. This .svk file, don't worry about this. This is just a file that Sony Vegas creates whenever you import the file into the program. This DOTA file here, this is actually what Fraps is going to name it by default. It'll be the name of the game followed by a timestamp. This is the video footage of DOTA that I just recorded. This last part here, this last file rather, this is the file that I'm actually recording right now as I'm making this footage. So, the first thing that I'm actually going to go and start completely over. That's actually a much better idea. So I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of all this, get rid of all that. Matter of fact, let's start totally over. So, nope, don't want to save any of that, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to talk about those settings after I import these files. So, I have a totally new project in Sony Vegas. I'm ready to get started. The first thing I want to do is I want to take my video file, and again, I know that the file that I want to use is the first file that I recorded at the start of this video. I'm going to take this and drag it into Sony Vegas and put it on the timeline. What you're going to see now is you're going to see a preview appear and also 2 tracks. Track number 1 represents the video. Track number 2 represents the audio from that video. You're going to notice that the audio is a total flat line. The reason for this is because even though I was setting it to record the sound from my computer, I'm not making any sound from it. And also, I'm not recording from my microphone using Fraps. I'm using that with Audacity, or I'm using Audacity for that. That's why this audio actually has nothing going on here. This brings me to the last part of this. Within Audacity, I took my file, I cleaned up the audio, and I exported it as an MP3. Again, I highly recommend checking out Audacity tutorials if you're interested in learning more about this program. It's really, really good. For the sake of simplicity, I had it export to my desktop. I'm not going to explain every file here, so don't be intimidated by all that. But what I do know is that I named the file tutorial1.mp3. This is my actual voice that I recorded for the first part of the video. I'm going to take this and drag it into Sony Vegas. I'm going to put this down here in the timeline. There we go. Now I have 3 complete tracks, and you can also see now this audio track actually has a little bit going on. Let's go ahead and preview and see what it looks like. Hello friends, JJMerrill here. Hope you guys are doing well. Alright, good. So you can see now that I actually have a more or less complete setup. Now, one thing I want to mention is that I'm going to need to zoom in here and make sure like I remove this dead air from the front of the video. This audio syncing is really, really critical, and if you get this off, it can really disrupt the flow of your video. That's one downside to using the Audacity recording method that I like to use, but it makes the quality so much better. So I'm going to go into here. I know I want to delete this dead space. This is such a useful shortcut that I think everybody should know how to do this in Sony Vegas. Hit the S key. That's going to split your track into 2 parts. Now, I can right-click on the first part of the track, delete it. That's dead air is now gone, and I can move over to the audio track so it starts at the beginning of the entire clip. Hello, friends. JJMerrill here. Alright, that's better. So that's probably more or less accurate. That's good. So what I want to do now is I'm going to do these exact steps again, and I'm going to show you how to bring in your DOTA 2 footage. I'm going to go and scroll over here a little bit to the right, just so I can see what I'm doing. Now, I know first I want to bring in the DOTA 2 video, so I'm going to bring up the drive again. I know the file is this DOTA file that it recorded, so I'm going to, and look at this, 11 gigs for nearly 3 minutes. You need a big hard drive for this, just keep that in mind. So I'm going to take the file, drag it into Sony Vegas. It can take a minute sometimes, by the way, especially if your file is very, very large. Sometimes it can take minutes for the stuff to actually be able to import. I don't run like a beast of a machine. It's relatively powerful. I'll show you real quick. This pretty decent i7 958 gigs of RAM, yada yada yada, but nothing too crazy. But you do need a fairly powerful machine to do stuff like this. Not a Dell you buy from Walmart. So again, I'm going to take that file, drag it into Sony Vegas. Okay, good. You can now see that even though I have 2 separate tracks here, they're butted up against each other, which means whenever this first track ends, it's going to go ahead and automatically go into the next track. Now, the next part of this is I need to go ahead and get my voice file into here as well. I know that I named that tutorial 2 when I exported it, so I'm going to go ahead and drag that in as well. Okay, good. Now this is going to take a little bit of cleaning up before it's just right, but that's okay. I can go into here, I can edit this. This is why you want good editing software. You want to make things clean, crisp. You want to make sure your audio lines up just right. You want to make sure you don't have like some odd overlap. You want to come in here and add things, like a transition and fade effects, stuff like that. So there's a lot of things you want to do in here before you finally publish your video. But let's go ahead and see what our result kind of looks like, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to start near the end of the first clip and see how it transitions into the second clip. Stop this recording, and then I'm going to go ahead and start the DOTA 2 client, and we're going to record a little bit of gameplay and show you how it works. Okay, and here we are in the DOTA 2 client. Alright, good. So you can see from there that I'm able to combine the 2 clips, and I'm able to have them play together more or less seamlessly. Good ways to make this a little bit more natural is you can actually take and like blend your clips together so the video merges into each other. It adds a nice effect. So let's see how that looks. A little bit of gameplay and show you how it works. So you can see by doing that it makes things a little bit more smooth. It's not such a jarring transition. I recommend using effects like that. Use them sparingly though. Whenever you start to overload your video with effects, it gets a little grade school, so don't do that. But my earlier TF2 videos were a little guilty of that, but that's okay. That's nothing wrong with that. So anyway, now that we have all that done, let's imagine this is the end of the video. I'm going to do the same exact process for the part I'm recording right now once I'm done. But let's just say this is your entire video, you want to put it on YouTube, and you're totally done with it. What I want to do is I want to go up to File, I want to go to Render As. Okay? Now, this part has a pretty high level of complexity. But what I highly recommend just for the default YouTube format, YouTube really likes MP4 or WMV formats. I personally prefer the MP4 format, and I actually don't use any custom settings, or I use very few custom settings in Vegas is what I mean to say. You'll notice that on the template it says Internet 1920 by 1080 at 30p. Essentially what this means is even though I've recorded at 60 frames per second, it's actually going to compress this down to 30. But that's okay. Again, I prefer recording at 60 because it looks so much smoother. By the way, if I'm incorrect on any of this stuff, don't be afraid to correct me, and any questions you have, which I'm sure you have, you should feel free to ask them. But what I want to look at in here is not much, actually. I actually have not touched many of these settings. Again, there's a lot of good Sony Vegas guides out there, and this kind of goes beyond the scope of what this guide is supposed to show, so I'm just going to skip over that. You'll give it a name, yada yada yada, tell it to save, and then it's going to begin a render. I'm not going to do that quite yet because it requires quite a bit of processing power, and I'm not quite finished making the video yet. But once you have this done and you have it saved, you'll then go into YouTube and upload your video, and really, that's about it for the most part. So, in a nutshell, that's how you record Dota 2, or again, any game that you're interested in, and get it onto YouTube. Any questions that you guys have, or anything that wasn't clear in this video, feel free to ask, and I will do my best to answer. And if you have any interest in this as a hobby, I highly recommend picking it up. It's a lot of fun, and you'll be amazed at the stuff that you see yourself do whenever you're watching your replays. Thanks for watching.